These people who cannot stand that she is the first woman of color vice president and don't want her to succeed. And by the way, her husband is great too.
I have to say though, I'm a little surprised. I mean, when she was announced as the VP, I was like, it's all over. She's so accomplished, highly qualified. I'm a little struck by the lack of accomplishments in the policy portfolios she's been given. The border is a big one. It's not a win. No one's going to win. We haven't done major in border security or immigration reform since the Bush administration, but she is tasked with overseeing it, and the border crisis keeps getting worse. And I feel like the Biden West Wing isn't necessarily setting her up for success by giving her things that she can go out and champion at a time when voters, I get the age, like age is not the most important thing, but if you're electing someone who's an 82-year-old in 2024, you need to believe that the vice president is able and willing the next day to be the president. And I think there's some concern about just the lack of policy accomplishments that she's made as vice president.
I'm surprised that there's concern. I think it has a lot to do with this. She's a black woman.
That was, of course, the ladies of The View on Vice President Kamala Harris's reception with Democrats during her first term as VP. Robby, do you think it's all because she's a black woman?
Maybe you have to start?
Yeah.
Why do you hate black women, Briahna? Why do you want black women to fail?
It's hard. Every time I see myself in the mirror, I want to go psycho on it. Look, well, Alyssa is completely right there.
Yeah.
She has been given not very much to do in terms of her portfolio of policy things, and the things that she has been given, like addressing the border, have not been especially successful. It's difficult. I think that she has been set up for failure in some respects. Like, what was she supposed to do about the border other than visit and stand there for a photo op? But that doesn't make it untrue that she has had a rather unremarkable tenure as vice president. Now, the idea that she is being unfairly critiqued when I think blessedly she's mostly just disappeared from the public eye is odd. And the fact that people can keep making the allegation that the reason that she is not more popular is because she's a black woman without substantiating that in any way, it's disrespectful. I mean, look, we saw specific things about Michelle Obama, right? One of the top search results for Michelle Obama was an image of her like with the Planet of the Apes, face superimposed on her. She got all kinds of, I think, bad faith smears and attacks throughout Biden's presidency, and she wasn't the VP; she was just the first lady, right? And you can make other arguments about other black women in the public eye.
And despite that, she became very popular.
And
to be clear, she is well liked by people in a way that Kamala Harris is not.
And Kamala Harris has never been well liked.
No.
She had to drop out of the Democratic primary because she was polling behind Andrew Yang in her own state. Was that because of racism? Was that all the racists in California, including all the black racists in California? Was it racism that led these critiques of her on her criminal justice record in particular, and the fact that she spent her entire career locking up black people in her home state? Or was it, in fact, a charge led by a lot of communities of color who had substantive critiques of her that the mainstream media could never reckon with?
There's a little bit of projection here from commentators who say, oh, people just hate her because she's a black woman. No, she was chosen because she's satisfied. She checked both those boxes. That is the only reason she was chosen. And
I mean, that's true.
It's just true. And she doesn't have a constituency that loves her. She didn't have. She was not speaking to the policies of the moment in some way that was unique to her. And in fact, she was not speaking to them specifically. And Alyssa is also right that this isn't the biggest problem right now. But she will be set up to be a de facto successor to Biden. I think because she is not particularly popular, she will face a challenge for that mantle. But that's gonna leave the Democratic Party in a weak position. So if you're Democrats, if you care about the succession, you would, I think, want to be taking steps to try to make her more popular, and they are not doing that. Like, I understand why, like, Donald Trump wanted to make Mike Pence more popular because he doesn't care. But I would think Joe Biden and the Democrats more broadly do want Kamala Harris to be popular so that she could take over for him, if not before the completion of his potential second term, then after, when she's going to have a lot of the institution of the Democratic Party behind her.
Yeah, I have concerns about Kamala Harris's capacity as a politician.
Yeah.
I don't think that she doesn't seem like a bad person as far as these things go. I very much disagree with her criminal justice policies, but she seems like perfectly likable and in a different context could perform very well. But the political context is not one of them. I have never seen her demonstrate an ability to kind of speak off the cuff in a way that was persuasive she has trouble listening to questions, processing them, and giving an answer that's actually responsive. She doesn't seem like someone who is particularly well read on the issue areas, which is part of why she gives these weird, meandering responses to questions where she just repeats the same talk. We're at an inflection point, and what I want to say to you as someone who's listening to what you're saying is that in America, we have to understand. I mean, these
She's
crazy
one of the only
rambling
people that can sound scripted and off script at the same time.
Yes. So I don't think there's any rehabilitating her. I don't think there's anything that Biden could do differently. Yes, she got some tough breaks in terms of the policy she was assigned, but I don't know that it would have been any better in any other context. So now they just have to deal with the fact that to satisfy a diversity requirement that I don't really know who was asking for it, to be honest, because I think a lot of Black voters are very used to not having Black people on the candidate on the docket, on the ticket. They would like it kind of hypothetically, but most important, if you ask Black voters, they'll say they want someone who actually represents their interests, which has never been Kamala Harris. And the fact of having a Black face there to basically rubber stamp a lot of Joe Biden's anti-Black policies is not helping anybody.
Well, I think the media was demanding at least a woman.
The media, not Black voters.
100%
agree. A handful of elite Black journalists and guilty liberal whites.
Sure, but the appeal of I mean, it's hard for the Democratic Party at times to not do what those elite media people
What were they
say.
going to do? If Joe Biden picks, first of all, Joe Biden, by all accounts, was planning on picking Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah.
And the only reason he didn't pick a white woman was because Amy Klobuchar pardoned the cops that killed George Floyd.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was just a disaster in the middle of 2020. But at the same time as that fell...
Like indirectly. Like there was someone else. It wasn't the exact cop.
Her office. No, it was that cop had been under scrutiny for other... Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was maybe someone else in that department.
No.
Okay.
It was the cop. So that killed her chances, but it didn't. That has limited an ability to affect Joe Biden because still, despite that George Floyd fervor that was happening in 2020, Joe Biden still stood there confidently and with his chest said, we are going to fund the police harder. I do not support this. I am not going to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. So, Kamala was there. Like, it was enough to kill Amy Klobuchar's chances, but it wasn't actually enough to change him substantively. And that's going to be the case going forward. I mean, it was easy to kind of throw the bone to Kamala Harris. It's not really clear who else was really a viable option for him. And so, like, no one's asking for this. There's some pressure from journalists, but I also think that Joe Biden can do whatever Joe Biden wants to do. And Democrats have demonstrated that they'll fall in line and vote for him no matter what.
Switching from Klobuchar to Harris based on a perceived weakness on Klobuchar's part on like criminal justice reform was also very silly because Harris had a prosecutorial record just as militant as Amy Klobuchar.
Perhaps even more
Truancy,
so. And that's, I'm sorry, that's my critique of identity politics. I don't, wokeness, that people are struggling to define these terms. No. You should be mad at corporations that use a veneer of being historically marginalized groups to cover up for the insidious things they do, to aggregate wealth among the top 1%, to massively over-police various neighborhoods, to have surveillance regimes that make it so that you everything that happens in your front yard is being turned into a television show. You should care about all of that stuff and care about the fact that institutions use people of color and marginalized peoples as a cover. That doesn't mean that there aren't sincere concerns held by those groups at the same time. And they are getting exploited at the same time that you're getting exploited, and the coalition should be of everybody against these corporate elites, not against the people who are represented superficially by woke politics.
Indeed. All right, we'll have more Rising right after this. Please stay with us.